Harmony Brown. Welcome to That's For Sure podcast.
Well, thank you. It's so exciting to be here. I'm just, really honored. Thank you.
Well, I've been looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have about African New Day. But before we get there, I would love to just provide to you, and this is our first time meeting, so I want to share with you and with our listeners just a little bit of backstory about why I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. So in 2003, I was working for a church, Mariners Church in Irvine, California, and I was on the outreach staff. And at the time, Esther and Camille, who are the founders of Africa New Day, were recent graduates of the same university that I went to in Southern California, although we did not know each other from school, but we knew each other from Mariners. They were headed to Kinshasa and took a group of us from the church along with them. So in 2003, can't believe it's been 20 years, over 20 years ago, I went to Congo, to the capital city, Kinshasa, which is in the western part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, on about a 2-week trip. And that trip just blew my world, like a bubble, my world wide open. And the experiences that I had were just life altering for me. I came home and I actually pursued a degree in cross-cultural ministry and in missiology because of that experience. And so it was Esther and Camille who really helped me see just this totally different side of the world, so different from Orange County, California.
Right.
But gosh, so beautiful. And so I just have a sincere love for Camille and Esther and Toto. And this was before the work that they've started, that they joined and then started in Goma, which is in the eastern part of the Congo. So that's why I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. And I just wanted to share that little precursor story of the foundation in my experience in Congo. And I would love for you to give us just a big picture of what, fast forward a little bit and give us a current picture of what Africa New Day looks like, and then what your role with the organization is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Well, Africa New Day is really focused on the eastern part, which you've already mentioned, of the DR Congo. It is one of the most difficult places to work in really the world, and one of the top places in the world to work, as far as there's just ongoing conflict. There's high levels of poverty. There's a lot of natural disasters that have happened in the region as well. So there's just a continual need for transformation and change that happens. A lot of those things that are happening are due to other problems, right?
Sure.
Infrastructure problems, minerals being exploited, and taken out of the country. Lots of different things. We can maybe get into some of that, but Esther and Camille Nototo really felt like, hey, if you're going to go somewhere, you go somewhere hard. You go to the darkest places to make the biggest change. And neither of them had even been to that eastern part of Congo when they felt like they were called. I mean, they were literally, somebody actually called them on the phone and said, we need someone to come and do this. And they were like, what? And yet through, a series of different events and how they were seeking the Lord on what to do, the doors opened and they felt they were supposed to go and be there. So that, was, 18 years ago that they landed in Goma and started the ministry. It started with just a radio station. The Rwandan genocide, which is actually 30 years this year, that had, happened in 1994. And there was still so much violence happening because of that. And that was incited through the radio, that was incited through the media. And so their hope was, hey, if you can incite that kind of evil, can you do the same with good? Yeah. And so that's how they ended up there. And so fast forwarding, like you said, 18 years later, the media is going strong. Over 6 million people have been reached through the programs. Wow. It's incredible. We have multiple programs that reach lots of other, like men, women, youth. There's a school in place. We have an economic development, a business entrepreneur or like arm of our organization that's giving grants and loans and does business cohorts and training, because the goal is transforming Congo, from within.
Yeah.
So yes, we can bring aid and we can bring different things, but the real transformation has to start with the people on the ground. So we have 189 Congolese staff
Mm.
that are all, working within the programs within our school there and bringing that transformation and then training thousands and thousands of people every year. So really, we hone down to Africa New Days does education, advocacy, and economic development.
Mm.
So those are our three kind of, one, two, three punches, I guess you could say.
Sure.
And then then everything we do falls into those different categories.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then your role with the organization, you're executive director of the board.
Yes, yeah. So I'm the executive director. So we have, our organization on the ground in Goma, and that has its board and the 189 staff, and then we have me, one staff here in the United States, and a couple of different contractors and a board of directors, and that is to really undergird the financial side of the organization,
Sure.
the connections, the advocacy part. We're working with multiple other organizations, trying to even change some policies to get better funding for the minerals that are coming out of Congo there,
Yeah.
lots of different things that we're doing on this side of that. But my role, yeah, executive director. So I'm working on building an army of people who care for the organization, but also care for the people of Congo and want to see a change over here.
Yeah.
And so that's a quick version.
Yeah, no, you're doing a lot. It's such good work. And the vision statement on the Africa New Day website says that there are over 6 million lives lost,
Yeah,
because of some of the conflicts that you mentioned. I know it's
right,
very complex, but Africa New Day is about creating a new era of peace and prosperity. So
right.
talk to me about how peace and prosperity have come about in the midst of so much loss.
Yes, yeah. Well, one of the statistics recently that we were looking at, and we know this is not just Africa New Day, it's a partnership of organizations and individuals that care and have been working towards this. But 10 years ago, the Democratic Republic of the Congo was known as the sexual violence capital of the world.
Mhm.
And a young woman wouldn't usually get to, it was like 2 out of 3 women wouldn't get to 13 or 14 without experiencing sexual violence. And so, 2/3 of the population pretty much. And as multiple organizations have come in and started bringing awareness and training and actually working from the ground up, but also working from the top down, that has started changing. And so now there is even, more penalties than I've ever been before put in place for perpetrators of sexual violence.
Mhm.
That didn't exist 10 years ago. So now in a 10-year period, which is long, but also not long when it's been something in place
That's right.
for, centuries, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you're seeing this change. And so that those numbers
Mhm.
have dropped. And we're starting to see again the individuals, women getting understanding of that this is not doesn't have to be their norm. This doesn't have to be just the way it is. And
Mhm.
then we also, some of the programs we have created, Africa New Day has created, but also others, empowering men with positive masculinity and actually telling them how wrong this is. Because again, it goes back to if you you're doing what has always been modeled to
Right.
you. So half the time you don't even know. You mean the consequences are bad, but you don't know the why. You don't know why it's even wrong or if it's wrong. And so getting in and bringing truth and transformation at that level does start changing,
Mm.
the population in general. And again, at the same time, getting the powers that be to acknowledge this is a problem and change it. And so then in 10 years, we see prosperity, peace in this one area,
Yeah.
and there's lots of other areas, but this is just one example of being able to look at the statistics and see, oh my gosh, something is actually changing. Peace is coming to this area that has been known for sexual violence, and that's massive. So that's one of those things. We're really working. I'm in the process of doing a deep dive for the economic report for the area, because again, we have, these businesses we're trying to get up and support. Again, so often we're like, well, how do you fix poverty? Well, you fix poverty, with education, and then by creating wealth, opportunities for wealth
Yeah.
long term, versus, hey, here's a handout, right? And you've
Yeah.
probably heard this before. It's not a handout, it's a hand up.
Right.
And so we're starting to see the change even in the economy in the area, because, hey, anybody can do this, and we can do something, and
Yeah.
we're going to give you the strength that you need through training, support, whatever, to start a business and then follow through with that business to then create wealth. So
Mm.
those are a couple of things. And then again, there's more peace when there's less poverty. So yeah.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it takes so much on the work. I mean, on the ground, hard work to get these things in motion. And I think what a difference it makes when men and women are empowered to care for themselves and their families and not necessarily rely on, the aid that's coming in. But that's the beginning of true transformation from the inside out, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then building everything, that is, we've coined it as sustainable solutions, because there's always a solution. So
Right.
what is the solution? And then how do we make that sustainable long term, versus here's a solution and it's a quick, easy fix. But how do
Hmm.
we see a need, fill a need, as well as fill that need as long as we possibly can, or indefinitely, or
Right.
alleviate need completely. So yeah.
Yeah. A noble mission and vision for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's a different context because, like I said, I was in Kinshasa, which is the capital, and it's on the western side of the country. And Goma, as we mentioned, is very far east, closer to the border of Rwanda. But I remember visiting a house of peace. It was a Mother Teresa home, and it was both an orphanage and a hospice at the same time. And
Wow.
I remember, I mean, this has been more than 20 years since I walked into that space, and I still continue to be um, just kind of shaped by it. Like that experience of walking into a place that holds both um, hope and peace with the babies that they were caring for, and the joy on one side, and then just across the quad was this hospice of just hopelessness and people dying. And it was just a real rough scene. And yet these nuns at this Mother Teresa home were holding so carefully this tension of pain and peace at the same time. And when I think of African New Day, and when I think of what founders Esther and Camille and the staff are exposed to every day, it's really walking with these two, pain and peace, at the same time and simultaneously. And I wonder, in your experience, Harmony, how have you seen this walked out? What does it look like within the context of African New Day? But what does it look like to hold both peace and pain at the same time, with these programs that are being carried out for a number of
Right.
people?
Yeah. I think, being in this work for, 20 plus years, not with African Native, but across the world, what I've seen is there is this thing, called compassion fatigue, where it's almost like I think it's a psychological necessity at times, where you harden yourself and you just get it done because the pain that you're experiencing is so great, right? And so it's like there's that hardening almost of your heart, because you have to face it. You have to go through it every day. You have to show up in these incredibly hard situations full of pain. But what can happen is that can then wane the hope.
Mm.
Well, nothing's ever going to get better. We just, it's all terrible, all of that. And so one, I think with African New Day is the staff are very aware of that reality. And so they talk about it, they process it. We have a whole counseling department that is for all the people we work with, but is also for our staff, because it's so important to hold both those things in tension, like you were saying, and not lose one or the other. Not be like, well, it's all fine. We're gonna ignore the pain either, you know. And so I've watched them walk through that. Okay, here we go. Here's another thing. Like they're already in constant intense situations. And then
Yeah.
since the end of 2022, it's just been,
Mm,
exacerbated with
yeah.
the 23 movement. And so now it went from, hey, we have a lot of poverty, we have a lot of stuff going on, to millions of displaced, millions of people being displaced because of what's going on with
Mm,
it's almost like a civil war, right?
yeah.
That is taking the area with everything that's going on. And it's just the displaced people are like all over the place.
Wow.
And I think instead of watching the staff be like, okay, well, cool, let's just get our heads down, do our job, we'll do something, okay, what can we do? What can we do? Let's open the property that we have that we haven't built on yet for people. We were able to do like a gap funding for the children who had been displaced.
Mm,
And again, this is just more work for our
sure.
staff. Nobody paid more.
Yeah.
No, it was that, but it was like we have the infrastructure, we're a school. 85% of children who are displaced or refugees never go back to school, right? So it's a whole generation that can be lost because of what's happening right now, education wise. I mean, it lost in a lot of different ways, but just education, just looking at that one part. And to say, what can we do? How can we be the answer? Because there has to be a way. And to see the staff step up and say, we're doing the research, so we're going to go into this one area and we are going to provide education, gap education for whatever they've missed. And then all the children who have to do exams. So there's set exams, kind of like our, PSATs or, SATs here, where
Yeah.
you do it. But in DRC, if they miss that exam, they can't continue in school.
Mm,
So it's like, how do we identify all these children, get them the education they need in that gap, and then pay for them to go get
yeah.
their exams done. And then once they get those exams done, that means they can stay in the school system. And then now can we help their parents who are in crisis,
Yeah.
extreme crisis,
Sure.
get their children into a program near the displacement camp, just so that these kids can continue. So we were able to do that with thousands of children this last year. Um, Again, our staff weren't getting paid anything extra. They were working full days, and then they would go out to the camps in the evenings or late afternoons to just be that answer. And it was just amazing to watch, because you can so easily, oh, there's so much pain. And I just want to turn it off. Like I'm doing everything I can already. And, staff using their own funds to, help the situation and those kind of things. And that's where you see that, okay, we're going after the pain with hope, right? Like we're going to face it head on and do something about it. But I mean, that's just one example. I could probably talk all day about all the different things I've
Sure.
seen with them doing, but it's that we have to keep our hearts soft and positioned towards that. And at the same time, go, yeah, go for the hope,
Yeah.
and promote hope the way we can. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we're going to get to in just a minute some of the biggest needs that the organization and the areas facing. But
Yeah.
before we get there, I'd love to just kind of bring it home here to the West for a minute, because
Yes.
talking about feeling overwhelmed, not knowing how to help, the need is so great. And for those of us that are listening in the West and in America, um, it is so hard, myself included. It can be so difficult to hear and learn about these things that are taking place in what feels like a world away, and to
Right.
not be so overwhelmed, because we are already, we've got our own families, we've got our own situations, we have
Totally.
our own crises, we have in our own context all the time. And so, Harmony, how do we, for those of us listening, how do we,
Yeah.
yes, take care of ourselves at home and what we need to do in our daily lives, but how do we also extend that heart of compassion and care for a true crisis that others are facing, so far from home? I mean, how do you do it?
Yeah. Therapy helps.
Yes.
Same thing, counseling. You always
Yeah.
check in. Right. Well, yes. God, that's a very, very good question. I think because sometimes we don't know what to do or we see the need, we move into a paralysis of like the need is so big, I can't do anything.
Right.
Um, the thing that I've realized, oh, over all the years of doing this is like you can't maybe write a check for $500,000, right?
Right.
But that one thing you do like you are able to do makes a
Mm.
difference. And I think that's the thing I have to hold in tension a lot because I want everything changed all the time as quickly as possible. And it's so overwhelming and
Yeah.
and I have to realize like, well, if there's one life that I can impact, then it's all worth it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm going to stop for the one. I'm going to think about the one and then the next one and then the next one, versus trying to think about it all at once, because there is that paralysis of now I don't even know where to start. I don't even know
Mhm.
what to do. So I think that has helped that process of, okay, what's the one thing, I can do? And it's the same with African New Day, worked with, a lot of the child sponsorship organizations and a lot of the research and what we found was that, yes, the funding helps, but the idea that somebody on the other side of the planet cares for me as a child, in Africa or in South America or whatever,
Mm.
actually has bigger impact
Mm.
on their lives, than even the funding. Yes, they need to go to school. Yes, they need to eat, that, but being like somebody who doesn't even know me cares for me.
Mm.
And just the emotional impact and value that is given, makes such a difference. Huge, huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
So I remember those things when it feels really overwhelming, and all of that. I think also we do this, and I don't know why, but we're like, well, or we can move into like I feel guilty,
Mm.
and that's no good either.
Right.
Like you feeling guilty about that you're in the US and somebody else isn't, that actually doesn't help. That's actually from the enemy, right? You feeling like, oh, I want to do something, I want to make a difference. That is very different than like, oh, I can't do this. Or I have a friend who she has a huge ministry and all that. And for years she'd be like, she was in Africa. She's like, I'd come back to the States and I'd be like, well, I can't have a hot shower because my people in Africa don't have a hot shower. And well, I can't eat cheese because my people can't eat cheese. And, in Africa. And she really at one point said she felt the Lord be like, this is not doing anybody any good.
Right.
You having this mindset, just move forward. And I remember that a lot when it's like, you want to be like, oh, how do I do it? And so there's that piece. Yeah. So anything we can do. The other thing I realized too, and I know like, this is a, Christian podcast, so you're going to get this, but praying
Yeah.
changes everything. And I think that all of this makes a huge difference that we've talked about. But the prayer piece is like, when I
Mm.
don't know what to do, I'm just going to pray.
Yeah.
And, I can tell you stories of supernatural intervention and things that have happened
Mm.
because someone was like, I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night. And so I started praying for African New Day.
Mm.
I couldn't, and this is what I did. And so trying to just keep that at the forefront of our thoughts, is, I really believe, one of the most powerful things any of us can do.
Yeah.
And we're all interconnected. We're all God's kids. It's every tribe, tongue, and nation.
Yeah.
And so it's like when we step in and into that gap and we pray for the other side of the planet, whatever it is that's going on, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
So, 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 so powerful. But yeah, so those are a few things.
Yeah, no, those are great. And I think, yeah, that prayer piece is huge, like you said, because it can calm the fears and anxiety and the weight that we might feel over a situation we feel very powerless over.
Right.
And it can also remind us that Jesus is very much involved in what's happening over in Goma and everywhere in the world. Like he's very involved. And so it also increases our trust and dependence upon him and the story that he is telling. And I think it is so good no matter where we are. to remember
Yes.
that that piece is so huge. And so, Harmony, maybe you can share with us just a couple. I know there's a lot going on, but maybe one or two. You mentioned displaced peoples, but what are one or
Yeah.
two of the greatest needs that the organization is facing right now? And then what are some of those tangible ways that we can participate, be it prayer or what other options are there to join the work of African New Day?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So some of our, I mean, pressing needs is, okay, I have to think about which ones are
I
they're
know
all
there's a
pressing,
lot.
but
Yeah.
no, yes. Well, okay. So one thing we've been really looking at, as far as I'll start with the displaced, is currently we have two properties that are just outside of the city that are owned by the organization, and our plans were to build on it. Our plans are to, oh my goodness, to build on that, and of course that's going to take time, and doing it well and everything. One property is walled off right now, and we actually do trainings, we do clinics, we do food, everything in that property multiple times through the week for the displaced. The other property we actually have displaced living on. So this camp, with it's 35,000 families in this one
Wow.
camp. It's very, very dense. It's
Wow.
very hard, there's people everywhere. It's hard ground, actually. It's on lava rock.
Mm.
And it's also right next to the city dump where they, are taking the trash and all that. So
So it
it's
smells.
not. Yes, it
Yes.
smells,
Okay.
and it's not the best situation for anybody in
Yeah.
there or all of that. So as the camp, it expands out, it reaches to where the dump is. So currently, we're trucking in, well, we're not, but the government is trucking in water for the camp because there's no water on
Okay.
in the properties anywhere near that. And I mean, but families are getting about a gallon a day
Mm.
allotment. So it's,
Okay.
it's not very much at
Yeah.
all. And all of that. We have an opportunity because we own the property to actually put a well
Mm.
on the property.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the sustainable solutions. One, if we can do that, that allows us to have water to the property. So as we build eventually all that, but then it's an instant kind of, well, not instant, still would take time to build a well, but it's a
Sure.
quick, answer to a thing we're
It's
seeing right in
meeting
front
a
of us.
need you have now.
Yeah. And so we have the need. It's like, we're meeting a need, and then we will have a need, and this can be both. So it's a sustainable long-term solution, but also with an instant kind of need met. If that were to happen, not only could we help the displaced, really indefinitely with the water, but then we also have, it for the community in
Yeah.
different pieces along. So that's one thing we're really looking at right now, again, because we want to keep helping the displaced, as well as continuing our
Yeah.
programs
They're
and all
not
that.
leaving anytime soon. I
No,
mean, they are.
no, right.
Yeah.
They're there. And I mean, I think they want to go back to their homes and their
Sure.
farms and their, that, but it's not happening anytime soon. And even if there was a big, exodus of people who could go back to some of their towns, there's still so many others. So yeah, so that is one kind of, as far as the displaced, we're looking at really trying to get up and running right away, in this next year if possible. Have a couple people interested in helping with that, and organizations. So that's one real need. So we have these, two other arms of our organization: education and then our economic development.
Mm-hmm.
They both just need the funding to continue. So we are looking to expand our school. We started 8 years ago with 37 students, and we are now at 1,856
Wow.
students. Yes,
Wow. That's good
incredible.
growth. Yeah.
Isn't that, it's incredible
Wow.
growth.
So what does it cost? I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, and I know I'm
Yeah,
interrupting because you haven't gotten to your
that's
third
okay.
arm
You're
yet,
good.
but what does it cost in US dollars to school one child for one school year?
Yeah, about $1,000.
Okay.
So, and that's with all their education.
Mm-hmm.
That's with their supplies, uniform,
Yeah.
2 meals a day. Like it's, very, yeah.
Yes. Well-rounded. Yes. It's
Yes.
not. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That number of
Yes.
students, but I can see how that would just be an ongoing need. There's
Right.
always
Yeah.
kids
And
that need to be in school.
yes. Right, exactly. So we can continue to grow, and that the biggest thing is that every year we have to expand the school,
Right.
and so that is really it. Right now, we do some scholarships, and then we do the expansion, but otherwise, the school's like about 94% self-sustainable.
Yeah. Wow.
And funding is not coming from the US for the school. It's not coming, from anything else. That we've worked with the government to get some different grants and those kind of things in Congo.
Hmm.
But really, in that short period of time, we have that many students and it's already self-sustainable.
Wow.
Besides, of course, the expansion and then scholarships that we send, we do as partners.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this next year we're looking to expand. We want to, we need to we just were able to purchase a property right across the school or right across the street from the school we already have. And so we're building that out. So that's another kind of
Great.
need, getting that ready for September for another, influx of students.
Hmm.
But we could definitely easily go to 2,000. And if we can continue to raise the funds to build and supply the classrooms, then we can kind of grow indefinitely in that sustaining model. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's so great. So I'm in Texas. I'm outside of Dallas, and maybe last summer I went to a farmer's market in McKinney, Texas, and there
Okay.
was a man from Africa, and he was selling beignets. So
Oh,
my kids are like, "We need donuts." I'm like, "Sure, of
100%.
course we do. Yes, of course we need
Yeah.
donuts." So I get to talking with this gentleman, and he's from Goma. And so I asked him, yes, I was like, oh my gosh.
Amazing.
So he immediately knew the school. I can't say the
Yeah.
name in French, but
Yeah.
which my husband's African who speaks French, and he'd be so
Okay.
bummed that I can't say the name, but I can't say it, but Africa New Day in French. He
Yeah.
knew Esther and Camille and he knew the school, and it made my heart so happy. If his beignets weren't way overpriced, I would have bought way more because I was like, this is a testament to the work that they're doing
Abs-
and the fact that it is known as he just lit up when I knew the same when we knew the same school in Goma. How random is that in McKinney, Texas? But
Right.
the work that they're doing is so good. The work that you're part of is so good. And so I heard what I heard you say in terms of how we can respond. And maybe
Yes.
you're not quite done with that, but obviously there's financial need uh,
Yeah.
for that long-term sustainability of water, for of the well, of school and education, and what is happening over summer, because this episode will air right at the beginning of summer. What are maybe some activities that might be taking place this summer that people can just jump in right away, in addition to well and education?
Yeah. 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 Okay. Um, so activities, I mean, we're always taking trips over. So if anybody would want to go, that's all. We love that. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll
I
talk.
raise my hand for our
Yeah.
listeners who aren't watching.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love it.
So yes, the trip. So we'll have potentially two this summer. So I can, we can talk about those dates, or we can put it on the,
Yeah,
website
show
or whatever.
notes. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And then, so that's it. We also have a couple of different events that either, people can be a part of this summer if they want to get, kind of introduce the organization, have some fun, ask some questions, do that. There's a few different events. We can also put those in the show notes, kind of
Yeah.
across different parts of the country. So that is another way to get involved. Another, thing we're always looking for is if somebody wants to do an event or wants to have, Esther, Camille, me, one of our board members come speak.
Hmm.
That always helps us a lot because again, it's getting more people involved. It's building that army to say, yes, we want to make a difference on the other side of the planet,
Yeah.
which is going to affect everybody, right? So
Yep.
if anybody involved or wants to be involved in that way, with events or hosting an event, that would be great. It could even be small. We're doing something called house parties, where it's like somebody's like, just come, we'll spend the night together, we'll have some food, and then we're going to talk and pray and just see what we can do. How can we get involved? And
Mm.
we just did one of these a couple weeks ago, and there's two schools that were like, well, of course, let's
Mhm.
connect our kids to your kids.
Wow.
Let's do something, and so there's things like that where, the kids are going to connect before the end of the year and then maybe do something, for each other through the summer and then, reconnect why they all start school in
Yeah, I
September. But
love that.
it's not fun. And so
Yes.
And it's like goes back to when we had pen pals, you know, before
Totally.
the
Yeah. I
internet,
love
you
it.
know, but it's that, yeah, that same like again, children here in the US getting like you experienced. There's a global understanding that comes when you're able to connect with someone from another country like that and see, and vice versa.
Right.
And again, it builds everybody's value to be like somebody on the other side of the planet cares for me, you
Yes.
know, and I'm connecting. So we are doing that, and that's really exciting. And then, of course, a back to school kind of push to help our students that are scholarshiped and need school supplies and
Yeah.
uniforms, you know, all of that. So
Okay.
that's it. We also, yeah, volunteers. We're always looking for volunteers. People who are like, hey, I got 2 hours a week. What can I do to help? We have a couple committees people can be a part of. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities to get involved and
Yeah.
be a part of what's happening, you know, with African New Day. So,
Okay, I love it. So, Harmony, I ask the same two kind of final questions on all my podcasts. It's been so fun to hear people's answers. But the first question of the last two is, what do you know to be true about God because of your experience as the executive director of the board with African New Day? What do you know to be true about God?
yeah. Mhm. There's so many things. I think, yeah, in this role and recently, I think I know that working in this dark place, like we talked about, and you can get a little jaded or you can, you know, get your heart could be hardened, you know, because of it. And yet, um, what I think I've learned is that, and I don't mean to sound cliche, but like God cares. Like he cares. He cares. And when you're faced with heaviness, when you're faced with a trial, when you're faced with like, this isn't how things should be, it's so easy for us to be like, God's checked out. God doesn't care. God's not good, you know, and we can just be like, I don't know how to process this, so I need to blame somebody. I'm gonna blame God. And I think in that process of being like, I'm gonna step back from that and explore it. I'm gonna realize, whoa, you really do care. And that kind of puts that responsibility back on me or us as humans versus us being like, well, God's in charge and he doesn't care. He's checked out. So now I can be versus, well, he cares. And I I'm part of him caring and me saying yes and me doing this is that reflection. And we get to step into our divine calling
Yeah.
when we do this work, you know, of if he cares, then I'm going to care and I'm going to do something about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what
Hmm.
that communicates for, like you said, the kids on the receiving end of that care. Like,
Right.
before somebody showed up to care for them, be it a letter or funding or to go to school or whatever
Right.
that care looks like, how could they possibly know that God cares about them? Like, how could they possibly know? But when somebody shows up and says, I care for you, I see you, your life matters
Yes.
to me, your well
Yeah.
being matters, I think that is one of the greatest testaments that God cares when
Yeah.
his people show up and care. And so I love that. I love that answer. It's not cliche, it's so true. God
Yeah.
cares.
Sure.
It's
Yes.
so good. We need to be stitching that on pillows instead of verses
Right.
out of context. But
Right.
yes, let's
Great.
stitch that on a pillow.
Yep.
It's so good. Thank you for sharing that. And then Harmony, this could be within African New Day or outside of African New Day, but
Okay.
where are you finding your joy in this season?
Yeah. You know what? I have a lot of fun. That's a really big part of who I am and how to balance the intensity that I do. There's an E. E. Cummings quote that says, "A day without laughter is a day wasted."
Yep.
And so I try to legitimately laugh every day with my kids, my family, you know, whatever it is, like just that does help everything. Every single thing, you know, that laughter and that joy. So trying to intentionally laugh, I think, and
Yeah.
find something funny or find something joyful and even seek it out if it's like one of those days that's a little heavier, a little harder.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of that piece. Sometimes it's, you know, playing a game, sometimes it's different things, but yeah, that's a big part of it. And then I think giving back and gratitude are the other two places I really find joy.
Mhm.
Just no matter what's going on, there's always something to be grateful for. you
Yeah.
know, always something. And so multiple times through the day, just stopping and being mindful about what is good really does help foster that joy, you know, whatever that is. And also the giving back. I tell my kids, well, I tell everybody all the time, anytime I speak or whatever, I'm like, we all have the power to change somebody else's day.
Yeah. Right.
We all have that power. No matter what is going on with us, I can be kind to somebody. I can buy somebody a coffee at Starbucks that I don't know. And that means that I'm never powerlessness. And so when we realize that, or when I
Mhm.
realize that, that brings that joy of like, whoa, okay. So if I'm feeling down, I'm like, I need to do something for somebody else. And
Yeah.
that's going to change my joy meter, I guess you could say, because
Yeah.
now I've done something back. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
really good. So yeah, we'll do. I'm going out with my son later today. Maybe we'll buy a coffee for a stranger because I love doing that kind of stuff. And you're right. It's so fun and it helps. It just helps our countenance so much. So
Totally. And then if it has ever happened to you, you're just like,
what?
for weeks, you're like, oh my gosh, that was the most amazing
Yeah,
thing. Somebody I don't know bought me a coffee and you just,
totally.
yeah, or whatever. Yeah, it's so powerful. It really is. These simple things that, you know, we sometimes forget. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Harmony, I have just loved having this conversation with you today and talking about Esther and Camille and the good works that they're up to in Goma. We're going to link to all the things in the
Yeah.
show notes, so people can find out more and go to the website and see how they can be involved. But like I said at the beginning, I just sincerely love Esther and Camille. I call her Queen Esther. Queen Esther and
Yes.
Camille. And I just hope and pray that they just continue to feel encouraged by the support that comes their way. And I'm just so grateful for them. I'm grateful for your time. And I'm just excited to see what the Lord continues to do through African New Day. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This was so fun. I look forward to what is to come.